Hello and welcome to Into the Shadows. If you're new here, welcome. And if you're listening in from before, welcome back. Today I wanted to dedicate this space to you, the listener, to rediscovering your wholeness and remembering who you are underneath your own shadows, whether that's projections or false masks, all the adaptations that all of us wear at some point in our lives to stay safe or to fit in. So today's episode is titled My Descent into the Shadows. The shadows being my unconscious. I knew I had a lot of trauma healing that I needed to do. So before dream work, before I ventured down this path, I started with a lot of plant medicine, psilocybin, ayahuasca, San Pedro, and also internal family systems, if you're familiar with that, and parts work. Some energy work through shamanic training and body-based awareness through Tantra. And all of those modalities greatly helped me on my path to healing my shadows and better understanding them. But this dream work path has been such a central part in my healing journey. So today, that's what I'm going to share with you. All the ways it's been teaching me through my dreams, and also why I truly believe it's one of the most powerful pieces of inner work that we can do. I had always had really vivid dreams. I just didn't know how to integrate them and where to start. I believed in my dreams. I would have dreams like prophetic dreams. And one dream that I had that really made me believe in my dreams was my mom came to me before she passed away and told me exactly when she was going to die. Not the date, but all the things to look for at the time of her passing. And not only that, but so many mystical dreams and magical dreams of things that I had been thinking about, and my dreams confirmed it or gave me like a deeper layer or level to work with. So the belief in my dreams was always there. Just like I said, I didn't know how to integrate them. And sometimes they would be really active, and then other times they would just kind of fall off. And I never really understood what kept them consistent. I do now, but I didn't back then. And one thing I learned that does keep them on is your willingness to show up to them. So I've said this in previous episodes, but it bears repeating. When you meet the psyche, it meets you halfway. Meaning when you show devotion to your dreams and dedication to your healing process, the psyche helps you unwind the parts of yourself that have remained hidden, just out of sight. And it helps you unravel the parts of yourself that have been hard to figure out. And just that alone almost deserves its own pause and a big deep breath. that everything you've been searching for outside of yourself is actually within. And we've heard that before, right? Like everything within you is what you're searching for. I don't know the exact saying, but this dream work path really is the answer to that. And I think that's why mystics and gurus speak a lot of meditation and going within. And dream work is one of those ways to connect to your inner world so that inner world speaks to you, helps you heal, and guides you home. So it's kind of crazy and super cool that your unconscious is trying to lead you to wholeness. Some things that it requires of you, first and foremost, is a degree of self-awareness. You need to know somewhat of your shadows to begin with. Otherwise, the way that you interpret the dream could be biased because you're lacking that self-awareness. And you wouldn't be able to quite get the message that your psyche is trying to give you. The other thing that it takes is dedication and showing up every single day and writing down your dreams and giving it the proper time and devotion it needs for the message to unravel. The other thing that it takes is courage, because a lot of the things that you encounter when you dive into the psyche can be really disturbing. I'm not going to lie. It's your shadows, it's darkness, it's all the things that you've repressed. And it's not always just yours. It can be collective and ancestral. And so a lot of the things that you encounter there can be really terrifying. I mean, for those of you who've had a nightmare, you can understand how to actively engage with that nightmare takes a lot of courage. Some of my shadows that had surfaced a few years prior to doing this dream work were shadows about my dad sexually abusing me when I was a little girl. I didn't have memories of this abuse, but I had a lot of the symptoms. I was numb to my sexuality most of my life, and I always looked to older men, especially grandfathers with their grandchildren, as predators. And I thought that was normal. I didn't realize that was a trauma response, which is very much linked to hypervigilance, which is always scanning your environment for threats. So I lived in this kind of hypervigilant fight or flight state, but then my nervous system would go into a collapsed state when things got too overwhelming and life got too hard. I learned about this abuse, but the thing is, I was so grossed out and beside myself that it had come up that I decided to push it down into a box and not deal with it for 2 years. It was just too much for me to handle, and I didn't really know what to do with that information. I did try and heal this abuse through reclaiming my sexuality, through my coaching, through Tantra exercises, and honestly, those really helped, and I made a lot of progress. But my nervous system was still shut down, and unable to make further progress to where I wanted to go. The hypervigilance, the perfection, the scanning for threats, and the really deep-seated fear, those are the things that made my nervous system go into shutdown. And that shutdown showed up as freeze and disconnection and numbness and a lot of fatigue. And I felt so completely and utterly stuck. I carried so much shame around the way that I lived my life. Because for those of you who know this kind of pattern, this hamster wheel, it feels like Groundhog Day if you've seen that movie. But it's just endless ups and downs and not getting anywhere. And it's truly debilitating because you sit there and you look out at the world and you see people living normal lives and being productive and getting stuff done. And you can't help but think, what the hell is wrong with me? I was really sick of not progressing, and I was so desperate. And what I did in that desperation is I had a moment where I was so desperate for change that I got on my knees and I prayed. And whether you call it God or spirit or source, my word for the divine is spirit. And I got down on my knees and I prayed. It's making me emotional. But that moment of surrender and really asking for help, I swear, is what really helped me commit to the path and believe that the Spirit was really helping me. And I felt it. I have some really rad dreams to confirm it. But I had no idea just how powerful this journey was going to be. But I do believe that Spirit answered my prayer. Because shortly after that plea for help, I started to have sexual abuse dreams come up from the surface in my dreams. And I knew that because I had pushed it down, that meant that it was time to face it. And I didn't realize this at the time, but my sexual abuse would have everything to do with my stuckness. I just thought something was wrong with me and that I lacked willpower. I didn't realize that those two were connected. But my dream world was inviting me into my subconscious, into this abuse. And before I dive into my descent, I just want to pause and say how utterly amazed I am at Carl Jung. The fact that he dove into his unconscious and was the pioneer of this path. For 7 years, he spent learning and recording and integrating his unconscious. In my mind, he's one of the bravest souls. And I'm so grateful. Because if it wasn't for him, I would not have had a map that my psyche gave me to my wholeness. And this path has been life-changing. Because not only did I come to heal my sexual abuse, but I also healed my stuckness. And through this process, I've shed false masks and personas, some of those being striving and judgment and shame. And some of the things that I've retrieved has been discernment, my inner knowing, my inner fire, presence, my body, my instincts, my boundaries. And I've rediscovered what it means to truly feel joy. And how I know that I've recovered all that is because of Carl Jung. Each of those things I listed around retrieval and shedding showed up in my dreams where I was gifted a circle. And a circle in Carl Jung dream language shows up when the psyche is healing and reorienting itself. So they show up during psychic transformation, especially when the conscious ego is being oriented to something wiser and more whole. So when a circle appears, it signals that the psyche is actively in the process of restoring balance and unity. And that's how I knew when I was receiving those circles in my dreams that the psyche was, in fact, guiding me back to wholeness. So how did Carl Jung start on this path? Well, what he has said that has saved him was his willingness to stay with the images, write them down, and paint them. But most of all, to treat them seriously and not dismiss them as just mere fantasy. Essentially, to trust them. And that's exactly what I decided to do. To show up to every single one, even if it seemed like a dumb dream, and write it down and take them seriously. What I wasn't expecting is when I started to show up to my dreams, I was flooded with dreams of distorted masculine men. So much so that I started to research what it meant. And that's when I found that Carl Jung spoke of an inner opposite part. So men have an inner anima, which is an inner feminine aspect, and women have an inner animus, which is an inner masculine aspect. And Jung believed that until we integrate this inner opposite part of ourselves, it tends to act autonomously. So it can show up as controlling thoughts, opinions, or projections. But he believed that once this part is integrated, it becomes a guide towards our self. Self with a capital S, meaning our wholeness. He saw it as the first major inner figure that we encounter when the unconscious begins to open up. He called healing this inner opposite the bridge to the self. So today I'm going to be speaking about my animus. And just for reference, animus is the same as inner masculine. So if I say one or the other, they mean the same thing. Every woman's animus is going to be a little bit different. because we all have different histories and things to integrate. But some of the ways that you know that the animus isn't integrated in yourself is it can show up as really critical. So that voice that says, you're not enough, or you'll never do it right, or who do you think you are? He drives this perfectionistic overthinking and the part of you that wants to constantly compare yourself to others. Jung said he can possess a woman's thinking, filling her world with fixed opinions, judgments, and self-doubt. He can also show up as a controller. Maybe you become rigid or hyper independent or unable to relax. Maybe it's hard for you to receive. He can also show up as the abuser, the masculine who hurts you or abandons you. And in this state, your feminine essence, that intuitive feeling and receptive side, isn't able to flow. And she can become cut off from her inner knowing because this inner masculine has turned tyrannical instead of protective. But when he's healed, the animus becomes the part of her that helps her act on what she feels and what she knows. He protects her. He sets healthy boundaries that can honor her energy instead of drain it. He's the voice that says, you're safe to rest. And just like that inner protector, he shields her from the chaos and creates space for her intuition to speak. He's also the builder. He helps her bring her visions into form. And he gives her the discipline that's required to birth her ideas into the world. And lastly, he becomes your greatest ally. So he becomes this kind of inner partner where he encourages you to move towards what's true. And he then acts from that devotion. When the animus is integrated, you don't lose your femininity. You're finally free to live from it. It's the inner alchemical marriage between the two that becomes the foundation of your wholeness. So this is that animus descent, my animus descent into my unconscious. And this isn't the whole arc, as that would get way too long, but this is the first stage, the descent, where I picked through around 3 months of dreams and pulled which ones I felt really represented this descent. So that's what today is about. And just a little bit of a trigger warning here. Because of my past history with sexual abuse, there are some sexual abuse dreams that come to light in this episode. So if that's something that triggers you, I invite you to turn it off or come back to it when you feel more grounded. But without further ado, this is my animus healing journey. So one of the very first dreams that I have, I am in a room with a live dragon, and this dragon is alive, but its spine, its back of its spine, its bones are exposed. And I have a paintbrush, and I'm painting this dragon's bones with precision, orange and red. Then I'm sitting by a wolf, and I have hair gel in my hands, and I am doing this wolf's hair as it sits there. So this dream was obviously not about my animus. There wasn't a masculine man that came into this dream. But what this dream represents is showing me my intention of going on this path. So in waking life, I made the decision, okay, I'm going to get serious about my dreams and I'm going to do this. And then my psyche shows up and says, okay, look what you're doing. You are painting a dragon's bones. What does that represent? To me, that meant that I was reclaiming this dormant inner power. And dragons often represent the unconscious itself, and they show up when they guard treasure. And usually in dream language, you face the dragon, and the dragon is scary. But here, I'm painting the dragon's bones, which to me represented actively engaging and retrieving my inner dormant power. And the wolf scene to me shows, well, for context, I guess I should say this first, but when I was a little girl, my active recurring nightmare was that I was being chased by wolves. And so here a wolf is showing up as a symbol of pure instinct. And instead of running from it, it's tamed. I'm manicuring it. So this to me was a reclamation of my instincts. So this intention of taking my dreams seriously, the very first dream off the bat is showing me that I'm going to reclaim my power, and I'm also going to reclaim my instincts. And I just thought that was such a cool dream to have at the very beginning of this descent. The next dream I had was also a dragon, but this time it was a little more scary. I was on a roller coaster ride with my sister, and I remember we were going in and out of this really dark cave. And in this cave, there was like a really scary, dark black dragon. And this dragon was in thousands of pieces. And as we went in and out of this dark cave, I was feeling extremely overwhelmed and chaotic. And I wanted off the ride. This dream was showing just how fragmented my power was. And wanting to get off the ride was the emotional overwhelm that I felt around my relationship to power. My next dream, I was in a house, and it was a house I grew up in. And I was in the basement. And in the basement, there were thousands of millipedes and centipedes. And they were huge. And they started to swarm me and come all around me and overwhelm me. And they started to talk and asked me to feed them. And I thought that was really weird. But I woke up from this dream and realized that This was the hidden and repressed emotion of disgust that I pushed down for 2 years, not wanting to address or feel what happened to me. So then this next dream, this is the first time that the shadow animus showed its face. And I didn't recognize any of the people in the dream, and later really felt that this was part of the collective unconscious I tapped into. But I saw a man, and he was chasing 2 women around. And one of them was a white woman, and the other woman was a black woman. And as he chased the white woman around, she ran off and got away. But the black woman he caught up to, and he raped her. And I remember seeing the agony on her face. And this was a nightmare. Obviously, I woke up in a lot of panic and just like, what the hell did I just dream? Black represents in dreams the shadow or the unconscious. So here the psyche is showing me that this rape imprint lives inside of my unconscious. The next dream took it to a personal level. In the dream, I'm in a house and there's a man there, and I knew he was a pedophile. And I ran into a bathroom and I locked the door, but somehow he was able to pee on me through the door. When I got out of the bathroom, he had gifts for me. And I remember feeling in the dream that I needed to accept these gifts, or else he was going to hurt me. Kind of like I was supposed to like him because he gave me gifts. Then I was in my mom's bedroom, and she had some nightstands that needed dusting. And I was dusting her nightstands, and I was changing her pillowcases. So this dream was showing me that this wasn't just my trauma layer, it was also ancestral. It was showing me the generational pattern of disempowerment and suppression of the feminine. My lineage carried wounds of women being silenced, controlled, and abused. What annoyed me the most when I woke up was that I fawned and I went against my inner knowing, and I defaulted to submission rather than standing in my power. And the fact that this animus, this inner masculine, was able to pee on me through the door showed how this wounded masculine, this distorted masculine inside of me had marked me and was still able to get through even with a closed, locked door. So it was showing me the violation of boundaries, and how I went against my inner knowing to stay safe. And that deep inside my psyche, there lived a violating, manipulative, scary pedophile. Like, for reals, this dream really sucked to wake up to. And I didn't want to keep dreaming after this. And I can laugh about that now, but I was deeply disturbed when I woke up. The next dream went from generational trauma into personal trauma. I was standing in a street and my dad was there and I was covered in feces. And I remember I kept trying to wipe this poop off, but I couldn't get it off my skin. In the dream, I was irritated and frustrated that my dad was just watching me and not helping me. So I felt helpless and a lot of disgust. I even started to throw up in the dream. And this layer was showing the really visceral body layer of being contaminated by my dad. I did have, after this dream, some sexual abuse specific to my dad show up, which confirmed to me what I had felt and not fully known all along, that it did in fact happen, and that my psyche was safe enough at that point to expose what did happen. I was disgusted, but also grateful that the truth had finally come to light. This next dream, this is a transition dream. So after I had met these shadow animus figures, this dream, I'm boxing with men. And we're all in a boxing ring. And I remember there was a big man in there and he was telling everyone how to box. And I remember thinking, this man is interrupting my flow. Like I can't even box and be in the flow. But what happened next was I was on the grass with this big man. And he started playing with my breast. And I remember saying, hey, you are not allowed to do that. So I could use my voice, but I noticed his massive size and I noticed that I couldn't move my body. It was frozen. When I woke up, I was extremely annoyed that I wasn't able to fight back. It was understandable that he was so big and so overpowering, showing exactly how this pattern has played out. A big, overpowering man violating my boundaries and me not being able to do anything about it. It was a return of my voice, which I appreciated. But what I learned after this dream is something that Carl Jung calls active meditation. And it's when you have a dream and you sit with the images and what happened and you imagine a different outcome. And this is when my dreams really took a turn for the better. It's not that they got any less scary, but it was when I started to actively confront the animus. Instead of being the prey and feeling helpless to this dynamic, this dream is what led into my actual confrontation with the animus. So that's what we're going to get into next time, my confrontation with the animus. I really appreciate you listening in today. I know that this content can be really heavy, and so I appreciate it if you've made it this far. Maybe we can all just take a deep breath together. It's my hope that by me sharing my dream world, you feel inspired to start listening to your dream world too. So something really cool I wanted to add here at the end is after I recorded this podcast, I had the coolest dream that my psyche had gifted me a circle that was in the shape of a spiral, and it was a necklace pendant, and I was underneath the axis mundi, which is the tree of life. And under this tree, there was a swing, and I started to swing from its branches. And I believe that this pendant that I was gifted, because it was leather, was showing me a kind of transformation as I speak into this mic of more fully embodying myself. So that's what I'm doing here. Every podcast, every time my voice goes up and down and shakes and cracks, I'm doing my best to show up in my authenticity and actively working on that inner critic masculine who says that it's not good enough, or you got to do it better, or it's not enough. So just telling you that here to keep it real and let you know that this is also a journey and a path that I'm on. And I really appreciate you listening in today, and I hope you have a beautiful day. Thank you so much for listening.